Human Vengeance. Chapter 15. The Question. 5 minutes before the meeting was to begin, the diplomats stood waiting by the docking door. They each wore a provided translator and mask after they had been examined. Tiny cameras were placed on their clothes, concealed in buttons. Wolf had a direct connection to allow it to watch over the proceedings. Surrounding the 6 diplomats were a dozen soldiers. They stood at ease, full-faced helmets in place. They held laser rifles with a small launcher attached to the barrel, copied from railgun designs. Their uniform was clean and pressed, with body armor unblemished. Each pair had been assigned one diplomat as their quarry to serve as direct bodyguards. But until they were needed, they would stand back. Wolf spoke to them as they waited, as it noticed activity outside. Attention! 3 Zyvarg, 3 Hypale, and 2 Siva are approaching. No obvious weaponry, but all the same, be on your guard. Its voice, whilst robotic, was tinged with worry. Outside of the ship, it could only watch. But it did what needed to be done. The doorway opened, and our diplomatic mission met with them in the flesh. Genev stood at the forefront, mouth in a flat line. In person, they stood nearly 3 meters tall, towering over the other species. It wore a red top made out like a cross, with one strap going over each shoulder. Completing the ensemble was a long skirt, cut into shapes reminiscent of leaves, over top of each other. The other 2 wore similar expressions and clothes, though theirs were yellow and pink. Together, the 3 Zyvarg took the point, clearly putting themselves in charge of their group. The Siva were the next largest, approximately equal in height to ourselves. Their apparel was curious, a sort of ribbed material, dyed in colorful patterns. One had a pair of bionic eyes, whilst the other had replaced their left arm with a cybernetic version. Finally, the Hypale brought up the rear. Their bodies were round and flat, supported by 8 pairs of legs. They had a large claw on one side, the other ending in a 4-fingered hand. They were the shortest, being maybe as hard as tall as the Siva, but their broad orange bodies filled much of the bay, making them spread out. "Greetings!" Genev called out first, her voice filling the bay. Natasha led the human procession out, comforted by the rhythmic footfalls of the provided guard. She saw the narrowing of eyes from the aliens and quickly spoke to smooth any wrinkles as they formed. "Hello to you all. Please do not worry. They are here as guards, as part of our custom when meeting with others." One of the Hypale spoke up, their voice oddly musical. "A curious custom, but fascinating." One of the other Zyvarg clapped, inadvertently bringing attention to them. "As long as your weapons stay peaceful, you are welcome as well." Joshua, one of the diplomats, gave a small smile. "Thank you. I believe introductions are in order, Natasha." She gave him a look before smiling widely. "Of course. I am Natasha, head of this party. With me are Adit, Anne, Joshua, Samuel, and Tracy." Genev gestured to the Zyvarg first, pointing to itself, followed by the yellow, then the pink-clothed ones. "I am Genev, of course. This is Dursel and Havab, over here." As it motioned to the Siva, "is Fertis and Darsiv. Finally, we have Lopul, Sedul, and Suful." There was a chorus of mutterings as individuals said their own way of greeting. As it died down, Genev stepped to the side. "Please, this way. We have much to discuss, I'm sure." With that, it led the way into the station. The others followed, and our party set off into the belly of the beast. They were led to a seating area with various small tables. Each was surrounded by a multitude of different-sized cushions. Their way of accommodated different body shapes. Darsiv, the Siva with bionic eyes, addressed the group as they entered. "Please, take a seat. The important discussions will be had at some point, but a cultural exchange will start things off nicely." Genev clapped in agreement, taking a seat. After looking to Natasha for approval, the others scattered onto different tables. Soon enough, chatter filled the room as different areas were talked over. After a significant period, Natasha chose to take the plunge. She looked over at Genevieve, who had lapsed into silence as it spun its body to survey the room. Genevieve, I have one important question I would like to ask. You came to our planet and said that we needed to reduce our population. Then you did so anyway. Why did you do it? Silence suddenly filled the room. The other diplomats turned to face Genevieve, eager to learn of the answer. Despite their faces being covered, it was clear that the guards had turned their attention to it as well. It was the single burning question they were likely expected to ask. Natasha was just the one to pull the trigger. Human Vengeance. Chapter 16. The Answer. Genevieve laid its hands on the table, mouth opening slightly. It spoke with a knowing tone, appearing completely calm. I see why you would want to know. I can only imagine the surprise you must have felt when our fleet made its appearance. It tapped the surface, activating a projection. It showed an image of Earth, gently rotating in place. It is a long answer, stretching back to many revolutions before our contact, so please bear with me. My race, the sci-fi, came to an understanding as we were approaching our ascendance to space. Our home planet can only handle a certain level of population, with a modicum of luxury. We spent time understanding just what the cap would be. Our greatest minds formed an algorithm to analyze and create our answer. It gave us a hard limit, one that was close to surpassing. We used that knowledge to limit our species' expansion until such time as we could find a way to spread off planet. It was a hard time, but we persevered. As we spread, we saw another intelligent race approaching our level. The Siva. Fertis took over the talk, rubbing his arm. We were near the precipice. Our population had outgrown our planet, and it was beginning to collapse. So when the Zyvarg came, with a promise to help, it was gratefully accepted. They took their algorithm, feeding it what they knew of our world. In the end, they showed us just how overpopulated we were. They gave us a choice. We could cull ourselves, or they could. Now, in our culture, only those closest to you can put you to rest. It is to ensure that the full weight of the decision is felt, a way to pass through to the great beyond in peace. To cull ourselves would be impossible without damning those who slew those they weren't close to. But the Zyvarg weren't like us. They could do it, and we would not be stained. Genevieve took over again. We culled them down, but it changed our perspective. We were the first. That much was true. We had the burden of knowledge that each world would likely suffer the same thing. So we took on the task of ensuring other races would join us. We had the basic algorithm, but it would need tailoring to each planet. If they weren't at it, then fantastic, the race would not need culling, and we could leave a helpful package to help boost them to our level. If they were, we would trim their numbers down first. Your planet, Earth, was one of the worst we had seen. With the population far above what it could hold, we were amazed it hadn't collapsed. We had to act after our algorithm had run its course. That is why we did the cull. There wasn't enough time to negotiate it with yourselves. Natasha looked at her fellows. She saw shifting expressions, with anger at this alien's dispassionate words. But they reined themselves in, taking moments to breathe. I see, Genevieve. I would be intrigued to know more about your history. Would it be possible to get a computerized copy for the others back home? They will be fascinated, I'm sure. Genevieve clapped his hands. Of course it would be. Their conversations changed, returning to other matters. The burning question was pushed away, to them seemingly sorted. Our party returned to the ship, exhausted. They had spent many hours talking about everything they could think about. Whilst the majority retired to their quarters, Natasha found her way to the bridge. Captain Harris gave her a nod as she entered, as he kept his eye on the rest of the bridge. How did it go? She sighed, taking an empty seat. They don't expect us to be angry at them. I've got a copy of their history on the way for the folks back home. He looked at her, shaking his head. Really? They bombed us, and they don't think we would be angry at that? Natasha rubbed the sides of her head. Apparently not. The Siva look at it almost as a point of pride, them being cold. It seems like no one else hates them for it. Harris shrugged, settling back down. Guess that makes us special. So you want to stay, or should we head home? Natasha gave a thoughtful sound. One more day probably won't hurt. There's a lot to cover, as I'm sure you know. They were hinting about a tour, which will be interesting. Then we should head back. Wolf, any thoughts? The AI chose to speak this time, without other species listening. I dislike the thought of you being so far in their station, but scans of the inside would help. Achilles would probably want blueprints if we can, but a semi-complete close scan is a start. Then we should go back. All this data needs backing up soon, and contingencies will need to be created with this new information. Captain Harris nodded in agreement. Thank you, Wolf. That's a good point. But first, I think you need to go to bed, Natasha. You look shattered. She nodded before yawning widely. That's not far from the truth. See you both tomorrow, or later today. She trotted off, looking forward to getting some sleep. One more day aboard this place. She could do it. One more day of gathering intelligence. One more day of maintaining her composure around beings who approved of unprovoked genocide.